24 minutes of Tiger Woods at Riviera Country Club. Jimmy Roberts back in the studio with Todd Lewis, Rex Hoggard, a couple of guys who have spent a considerable amount of time out on tour following Tiger around for a couple of decades. Guys, let's break this down into a couple of different subject matters, and let's start first with the business aspect of this. Todd, was there a headline out of what we just saw today?
Yeah, I think so. I think when Tiger said that, yes, we would like to have an agreement, being the PGA Tour with the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, it's not a necessity now with this alliance with SSG, Strategic Sports Group. Now, you have to understand Tiger. Tiger went from looking at PIF, Live Golf, as the enemy to the PGA Tour. But now, since the framework agreement was announced last summer, he's had to wrap his head around being the fact that these two bodies may be working together. I'm talking about PIF and the PGA Tour. So he's kind of moved towards that a little bit. But with this alliance now with SSG, he kind of mimics what Jordan Spieth said at Pebble Beach, the fact that, yes, it would be nice to have this deal, but it is not a necessity. I think that's the biggest business headline from Tiger Woods.
Rex, what about you? What did you take away from that as far as SSG and PIF and that whole situation?
I saw Tiger Woods, the diplomat, and I think Todd is right. It's kind of singing or speaking off the same card that we heard from Jordan Spieth, and we heard from Adam Scott and Justin Thomas. I think everyone's trying to send the same message. His is a little slightly softer, and I think that's by design. Tiger Woods is in these rooms. He's in these negotiations. He knows how important this is to the PGA Tour. But, yes, I think given the fact that they have just signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with SSG, it puts the PGA Tour in a better negotiating position, and I think that's the message they want to send.
So, clearly, this is not his favorite thing to do. He loves to play golf. He loves to compete. He loves the camaraderie of being out there. We heard him talk about being with Aaron Hicks and with Josh Allen and what you learn from other athletes and what you can share with other athletes. But do you think the messaging from today in terms of the deal with SSG, the potential deal with PIF, did we learn anything new? Did we move beyond where we were?
Well, I mean, first off, when Tiger Woods speaks, I mean, again, he whispers, but it roars.
Yep.
And so it carries it carries a lot of weight. But again, going back to him saying that we don't necessarily need that PIF alliance, I think that that's pretty significant. But at the same time, he didn't close that door. It wasn't like, you know, forget them. We've got it all under wraps here with SSG. He still did say, yes, we would like to do this. He talked about negotiations continuing. He mentioned the fact that team golf, which, by the way, TGL is what he's a big part of, could be a concept that could help these negotiations, whether it's in a simulator or out playing at a golf course somewhere across the country. So I agree with what he said. Tiger was a diplomat today, but he did make his position known.
Along those lines, I will say, let's look at the other side of this coin. So, however PIF is going to be worked into the equation, that will be decided going down the road. I think the more immediate conversation we need to have, and it's unfolded very publicly the last 3 weeks, is when you talked about the pathway back for the players who had joined Live Golf and coming back to the PGA Tour. That's written into the framework agreement. This is a big part of that deal, and I think Rory McIlroy caused a lot of people to sort of raise their eyebrows when he said at Pebble Beach just a few weeks ago that those players should be allowed back without fine or penalty or waiting out any type of suspensions. I think a lot of players push back on that. And I do want to point out that when Tiger was asked about this today, he referred to different models. So clearly they're looking at different ways to allow them to come back that are going to appease everyone involved. I don't know how they do that, but that's going to be an important part of it. And the part that stood out to me, no answer. Because he knows.
He was very neutral.
Yes, he knows how complicated this is and sensitive this is, the diplomat.
Yeah, listen, oftentimes with Tiger Woods or people who are trying to be diplomatic, the idea is to read between the lines. You know, you mentioned Rory McIlroy a couple of weeks ago. He was one of the most ardent opponents of Liv, and now he's had to readjust his position. You know, talking about Jon Rahm and perhaps finding a way for him to be able to play in the Ryder Cup. We've seen the world turn upside down when it's come to this this whole issue. But let me move on to one other business issue before we get to his playing aspects of what we saw today, and we'll do that a little bit later in the show. He's moved on with this new relationship with TaylorMade. So he's got this Sunday Red, which is his new. There's a new logo, and somebody asked him in the press conference if there was anything nostalgic about his attachment to the old logo, which, of course, was iconic, you know, not just in golf, but in sports culturally. I was in a bagel store the other morning ordered my bagel from a guy who was wearing a Tiger Woods TW hat. I mean, everybody's got that logo. It's like the Jumpman Jordan logo. He was very, very curt when it came to his response to, I don't know if it was nostalgia, but his connection to it. Did you make anything of that?
Well, he wasn't a diplomat there. You're right. It's obvious to me that there is some issue between him and Nike from a business perspective.
Those are the lines that I was reading.
Correct. There was something that happened, and we may never know what that is. But yeah, he seems like he wants nothing to do with his logo. He wants nothing to do with his previous brand. He wants to move on to this new brand. And I find it interesting, too, that Scotty Scheffler plays these TW golf shoes. And they may end up in the same group at some point this PGA Tour season. And Tiger's going to be in his Sunday red, and the world's #1 player is going to be wearing his logo.
And Tommy Fleetwood.
Yeah, that's right.
Also
Tommy Fleetwood
plays Tiger with golf shoes. So, yeah, you could end up in an interesting... It's funny you talk about reading between the lines. It's when his body language is so clear, like he was on that one, that he did not want to address this. And I just want to go back to the PNC. I think you might have been the one that kind of asked him, because there were rumors swirling that he and Nike were going to split. Very, very cold answer there, too. So you're right. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say this was a split that wasn't very nice.
All right. Well, you said it. Tiger Woods, when he whispers, it's really a roar.